This is Burke. It's 12 days north of hopeless and a few degrees south of freezing to death.
Bitch, where?
So, How to Train Your Dragon. It is extremely dear to my heart, but it also has the power to be just a little bit frustrating for me, as someone who lives in, shall we say, the south of the north? Don't take this video too seriously, I'm just here to have some fun. So first thing we ever really learn about Burke is that it is, supposedly, a very northerly location. In fact, we kind of know exactly where it's supposed to be, because up until 2019, there was an interactive map online that used Google Maps and thus gave Burke an actual real-world location. Unfortunately, it's since been taken down, but all is not lost, because the wiki has kindly preserved a screenshot of the zoomed-out map, which actually does have 2 bits of real land visible. This little bit right here is the southernmost tip of Svalbard, and this over here is the edge of an island off the coast of Greenland. And thanks to that, we have Burke's approximate location, which is in the Norwegian Sea at 72 degrees 5707.6 north, 2 degrees 2804.0 east. I have no idea if I read that correctly, but we're just going to live with it. Here it is as seen on Google Earth, and here it is on Google Maps for a view we might be a tad more used to. So that's clearly a very northerly location, which matches up nicely with what we're canonically told about Burke, which basically boils down to very cold and very north. Though this point sits kind of on the northern edges of the Gulf Stream, so at least they've got warmer water flowing from the Gulf of Mexico to warm the climate a little bit. But this is definitely the territory where glaciers become more common. Which, to be fair, we do actually see some in the general area. There's even one on Burke itself, though you'll only really know that if you watched the Cartoon Network show. The problem is, you don't really get trees like this that far north. Greenland's only natural forest, Quingua Valley, is, for starters, considerably further south than Burke's apparent location, and secondly contains entirely small deciduous trees like the moor birch, the greyleaf willow, the green alder, and the Greenland mountain ash. The northernmost forest in the world, the Lakunsky Grove and Arimas, which is about 6 kilometers further south separated by tundra, are home to only one type of tree, the Dahurian larch, which despite looking like this is actually also deciduous. It's also a small tree which tends to grow sparsely. So the likelihood of this kind of old, dense forest filled with towering, majestic evergreens growing on Burke? Slim to none. Trees this far north, if there are any at all, tend to be small. And also deciduous, apparently. I also have my doubts about any forests springing up on an island this small, this far north, considering Jan Mayen, an island not much further south in real life than Burke would be, looks like this. Granted, Jan Mayen is also volcanic, so that definitely introduces some complications I am not well educated enough to have an opinion on, but still. But I'm not actually that annoyed by some inaccurate nature. It's not the end of the world that Burke's trees aren't right for its supposed climate. This is a world full of dragons after all, and I've gotta be honest, thick fir tree forests are an aesthetic I can really get behind. But I gotta say, for a place that's supposedly so inundated with snow and rain, we never actually see that, do we? Like, for starters, what we know about Burke's climate is that
It snows 9 months of the year and hails the other 3.
which does actually make sense. Like, if we're taking the annual averages from Jan Mayen, they start getting average lows in the minus degrees in September, and then it's winter until May. And that's in today's averages, with big corporations slowly roasting us alive. And, unsurprisingly, the summer months are also the wettest. Which I can attest to, even though I just live in the south of Finland. Summer storms are a thing. So that actually checks out with what we're told about Burke. But it doesn't exactly match with what we see, does it? I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen snow on Burke. I guess it's possible that all of the stories told could take place over summer, but if that was the case, then there's not really enough rain. If you really want to push it, I guess it might also be possible that they also just take place over periods where the weather was good. Unlikely, given there are villains to contend with, and the Crisis of the Week to beat back in the animated series, and those don't tend to care about if the weather is going to be inconvenient. But even if we were going to accept that all of the stories we see in the How to Train Your Dragon universe take place during the summer, and just so happen to not happen during any of the worst summer storms, there's still one teensy-weensy bit of a problem to contend with. The Midnight Sun. Because you see, in Jan Mayen, which again is actually a little bit south from where Berk's supposed to be, the sun does not set at all from mid-May until late July. And even after that, it's not until late September that there's like an hour's worth of proper nighttime. They've got nothing but civil twilight. That's the brightest twilight phase where the sun is only just below the horizon and it's still bright enough to continue with daytime activities without any other light sources, from late April until mid-August. So clearly that's not the time we're in any of the movies or the series, because this sure looks like nighttime to me. Given what we actually see of the days and nights, I'd place them anywhere from early October to early November, or mid-February to mid-March. Except that would put us firmly in the constantly below freezing temperature range, and I don't know about you, but literally nothing about this says below freezing to me. Least of all the actual clothes the characters wear. Which, speaking of, these clothes, these right here, the normal outfits from the first movie that they also wear in Gift of the Night Fury, when it's presumably December because they're celebrating, Snuggletog, make me viscerally uncomfortable as a Nordic person. Astrid is wearing metal over her bare shoulders when it is below freezing outside. No, do not! You will die! Looking at Berk here, I highly doubt this is what it would actually look like in December if it were actually located where we're told it's located. But assuming that it is, the average daily temperature would be around minus 36 degrees Celsius. That is minus 32.8 Fahrenheit for the Americans in the audience. That is not a temperature at which you want to go out looking anything like this. And no, it's not because they had to save money by reusing the exact same models, or at least it's not just that. I don't know for sure if that's why they're in the exact same outfit here, because in Homecoming, the short about Hiccup and Astrid's kids during Snuggletog, everyone's dressed different because time skip, and they're still not appropriately attired for the weather. Listen, I'm not the best at dressing for the cold, but I can get away with that because I live in the south of Finland and don't spend a lot of time in winter outside. These kids are flying on dragons when the weather is below freezing. They need to bundle up or they will actually die. I'm not kidding, I don't care if dragons naturally radiate heat, it's not going to be enough. Basically, going off of everything we're told and nothing we're shown, this cannot possibly be what Berk looks like or what its inhabitants act like. The local flora should be more of a tundra situation, with maybe some forests of small deciduous trees here and there in some sheltered valley. The midnight sun should last from mid-May to late July, and night shouldn't start up until September. Winter basically lasts from September until May, and everyone's going to know how to fucking dress for the weather because they've already got dragons to deal with. The last thing they need is frostbite. But now it's time to throw a real spanner in the works. Because according to the How to Train Your Dragon Netflix series, Midnight Sun on Berk only lasts for 2 weeks. That is not physically possible in the location we've been given. Then again, according to the How to Train Your Dragon Netflix series, no one in the village sleeps at all during those 2 weeks, which is just...
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
People don't just stay awake for the whole time the sun is out. That's how you die. You can die of sleep deprivation. It happens. Yet, somehow, people have been living and surviving just fine beyond the Arctic Circle for thousands of years. How weird. It's almost like they go to sleep despite the sun still being up. Again, I only live in the south of Finland, but the days do still get long in the summer even down here, and I can promise you, I do go to bed even though it's still light out. Kind of like how in winter I get out of bed in the mornings even though the world outside my window's pitch black. But setting that nonsense aside for a moment, there is still the fact to contend with that this just isn't possible. This cannot be Berk's location and only get 2 weeks of midnight sun. It doesn't work. Which means I get to have even more fun and just throw this map out completely in favor of taking a stab at establishing a location myself. So first thing is, obviously, that it has to be above or around the Arctic Circle, because even though it's only 2 weeks, they do still get a period of midnight sun. Honestly, given everything, I would just take this and pull it a little bit down to somewhere around here, situated neatly in the Norwegian Sea, between Iceland and Norway. Down here, it's much more likely you'll get something akin to the day-night cycle we're shown on screen, and the local flora starts looking a bit more, well, local. The climate would also be considerably milder, more in line with the one we're shown, less with the one we're told about, even though there's still a bit too much fair weather for it to be perfect, but there you have it. So, in conclusion, this map is wrong. How to Train Your Dragon loves to tell us how freezing and miserable Berk is, but literally never shows us anything of the kind, and people do actually sleep during the midnight sun. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. I will be back here Thursday after next. Bye!